Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who Read Stuff. I'm Chip. This episode I'm going to be covering Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is the oldest book that we've covered to date. It was written in 1932. It was an early dystopian novel, so it's not the first dystopian novel, but it was an early and one of the more prominent examples of dystopian literature in the early 1900s, or kind of early to mid 1900s. So this was a book that was pretty controversial when it came out, and in some ways it still is today. The American Library Association ranks it as number 34 on its most challenged books of all time. It's been banned for many reasons. It's for the age it was written, it was highly sexual. There was strong language. It was considered to be anti-family, and it was also considered to be anti-religion. So it was removed from many libraries and classrooms, I know in the United States and other countries around the world. On the flip side, it was highly regarded in many ways too. So Modern Library ranked it out of 100 English novels of the 20th century as number 5. In the Observer, it was ranked as number 53 of the 100 greatest novels of all time. The BBC ranked it, or put it on its 100 most influential novels of all time list. And it's been adapted to television, movies, music, art. It's influenced a number of genres or avenues outside of literature itself. So the newest adaptation is on the NBC streaming service Peacock. I don't know when Peacock launched. I think it was earlier this year. But the show itself was dropped on the service, I think July of this year, so July of 2020. So a little bit about the book. The book was, in the book it takes place in the year 2540, which in the world state of London, which is a location in the book, it's actually the year 632 AF. AF stands for after Ford. Henry Ford was a very regarded and revered figure. He was looked upon as one of the creators of their society, or the primary creator of their society, with his advents through technology, the assembly line, creating the Ford Motor Company. He was highly thought of, and they celebrate Ford Day as a holiday. They swear in his name, so they say things like "Buy Ford" or "Ford damn it." I can't remember if they said "Ford damn it," but I think they should. They also take Christian symbology and they change it. So they take the symbol of the cross, they take the top of the cross off to make it into a capital T to represent the Model T, which is a creation of Henry Ford. The world state of London that I mentioned just a minute ago, it's this scientific utopia. It's one of the two primary locations in the book. So they have no war, they have no poverty. The state controls pretty much every aspect of their life. So it's totalitarianism to an extreme. The citizens are born into 5 different societal classes, from alpha to epsilon, each with a specific role. So if I remember my Greek alphabet, it's alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon. So I don't know why I still remember that, but I do. But the state manages things like human production. So there's a place called the Central London and Conditioning Center. And there they have these babies that they grow in test tubes. They are somehow born out of the test tube. Then they are grown, nurtured, conditioned into their predestined roles, and taught to like and dislike different things. So they're taught to dislike nature is one of the things that they're taught to dislike. And they do it through electroshock therapy, which sounds kind of cruel, but I guess it is effective within the book. Anyway, but each class basically is grown into this world. They are kind of made to accept their place in life. They don't switch classes as they grow up, so it isn't like our world where you could be middle class and either win the lottery or create a highly successful website or product that launches somebody into an upper stratosphere. But it still does reflect our world in some ways, and I'll touch on that in a little while. The other thing that the citizens do in the world state of London is they take a drug called Soma. So this is made readily available. It's a mood-elevating drug, so maybe it's like the Xanax of the 1930s, or laudanum or whatever they used at the time. But it's basically to keep the society happy, keep them kind of ignorant, keep them in more of an inebriated mood or some sort of euphoric state, so that they don't push back, they don't question, they just kind of exist within their role and don't rock the boat. The other primary location in the book is called the Savage Reservation. This is in New Mexico in the United States. It's more of a Native American society. So it's a very pure and preserved place, untouched by modern technologies and science of the New World. So in this place, the inhabitants are free to live a full life cycle. They are born naturally, they grow up, some get sick, some stay healthy. Ultimately, they die either, by natural causes and sometimes unnatural causes. Violence could be, something that results in someone's death. But in this world, they have free will. They can make their own choices and live their own lives, which is very different from the world state of London. And that becomes a key plot point when two citizens of the world state of London travel to the Savage Reservation and kind of witness this different society and different lifestyle. I don't want to spoil it, but that is a very important plot point. And I think it's a way of, that Huxley uses to kind of illustrate the differences, in society, and how, one society taken to an extreme versus another society at another extreme, that the extremes aren't good, that there's got to be some balances in between. So the themes that Huxley addresses in the book, so totalitarianism we touched on already, but it's, the society is controlled, every aspect of it is controlled through science, technology, drug use, suppression, all those kinds of things. So basically there's no individual liberties, no individuality. Each citizen is bred to perform a predestined role, to live, grow, and consume. Not really even grow, just to live and exist and consume. So the book really centers on the dangers of living in such a world, such a controlled society with rigid rules and things like that. Talked about drug use. In the book, the drug is called soma, but in our world, we still have alcohol. We have drugs. We have, different ways that people use to escape their reality. So it's not different than the book. I think the book reflects society, and I think that society still reflects the book today. Excuse me. Talked about the societal classes. So we had the alpha through epsilon societal classes, but when you look at it with our world in mind today, we still have societal classes. So we have, the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class are kind of the three primary classes. But is it any different that we're born into a class based on who our parents are, and that most of us kind of stay within that class for our lives? I know I was solidly middle class when I was born. I'm still solidly middle class halfway through my life, and I probably will never reach the upper class, and frankly, I don't care if I do or don't. So, that's not part of my ambitions. It's interesting to think about a book that was written 100 years ago, not 100 years, 88 years ago, so almost 100 years ago, and how it really explores the dangers of technology and how much we let technology control our lives. So when you think about it in our society today, how much technology plays a role in our day-to-day lives versus what it did 20 years ago versus 30, 40, and up to 88 years ago. But you look at, our cell phones, our mobile technology, it's everywhere. And I don't know that we realize how much we're being socially conditioned by, what we read on Facebook, what we see on Instagram, what we share on Twitter, all this information's out there, and there's so much of it that's put out there in the guise of news, but it's really opinion pieces meant to change the way people think. So it is kind of scary, but it is almost prophetic that Huxley was writing about the dangers of a highly technology-laden society, 88 years ago. The other one I touched on was that, the use of drugs and sex. So in this book, sex is very much a pleasure that the citizens experience, but it's also used like the drug soma as an escape. So it's not much different than society today, where people still use sex and drugs as an escape from reality. The book, overall, it left a strong impression on me. It's a short book, but it's kind of a long read. Not long, but it's complex. So, like I said, the plot isn't necessarily intricate, or there's not a lot of twists and turns, but it's thought-provoking. So it's one that I could digest in small chunks. There's parts of it that kind of drug, that gets a little slow. So it's not an action-packed story by any means. It's much more introspective, much more intrigue. But again, it really pushes you to think about the world, the age that it was written in, and our world today, and how the two still reflect each other pretty strongly. Overall, I would recommend reading the book. I've read it twice. So I read it once in college, and then I read it once earlier this year again. So I don't know that I will go back to it ever again, but it's definitely worth reading once. I think it's an interesting book that gives kind of a scary depiction of what society could be, what our future could be, what, living under this kind of oppression, like in the world state of London could bring about. So, I don't know that we'll see that kind of oppression here, but you look at the things that are going on in the world today, and ideas are being suppressed, opinions are being forced, people's minds are being manipulated. So it's not that the book is far off from where we've come in 88 years. You can definitely see where books where this book influenced other books, specifically 1984, Orwell's book that he wrote in 1948. That's another book that I plan to talk about at some point in a future video. But overall, I would recommend the book. It's not going to be an easy read, but it is a very interesting read and very thought-provoking. So if you've read it, let me know your thoughts. If you're planning to read it, please feel free to share any opinions below, or if you're currently reading it, again, let us know what you're thinking about it. We were going to be coming at you. We still got our Dune read-through that we're doing, so we're doing the deep dive into Dune. We're into book 2 at this point, and we'll be continuing through that. We've got some other stuff in the works and should be coming out soon. You can follow us on Instagram at TDW Podcast, or you can follow us on Twitter at TDW Podcast. Until next time, Alonzi.